The sky above Earth shimmered unnaturally, like oil spreading across water. It was mid-afternoon in New York City when the first ship descended, a massive golden vessel that seemed to glow with an inner light. People stopped in their tracks. Phones raised as they recorded the impossible sight. Within minutes, more ships followed, appearing over every major city around the globe. They were sleek and otherworldly, their surfaces smooth yet pulsing faintly, as if alive. News channels scrambled to cover the event, but no one could explain what was happening. Governments issued emergency alerts, urging calm even as panic spread through the streets. Social media erupted with theories: aliens, gods, or some kind of advanced human experiment gone wrong. But none of it prepared humanity for what came next. A deep hum filled the air, vibrating through bones and buildings alike. Then, without warning, a voice boomed from the largest ship hovering above New York. It wasn't spoken aloud. Instead, it resonated directly in people's minds. "We are the Valeth," it declared, calm but commanding. "Your world stands at the brink of ruin. We have come to save you." Dr. Elena Caldera froze in her lab at Columbia University, surrounded by monitors displaying chaotic data streams. She had been tracking strange gravitational anomalies near Earth's orbit for weeks now. At first, she thought it might be another black hole forming at the edge of the solar system. But this was something far beyond anything she'd imagined. Elena grabbed her coat and rushed outside, joining the crowd gathered on the street. The golden ships blocked out the sun, casting long shadows over the city. Around her, people whispered nervously, clutching each other or staring up in awe. Some cried, others prayed. One man shouted accusations into the sky, demanding answers. The Valeth didn't respond immediately. Instead, smaller drones detached from the main ships and began scanning the area. They moved silently, their metallic bodies reflecting the dim light. Elena watched as one hovered near her, its lens-like surface focusing intently. For a moment, she felt exposed, as though it could see straight into her soul. Then, just as suddenly, it zipped away. Hours passed before the Valeth spoke again. This time, their message was clearer. "Your species has brought destruction upon itself," the voice said. "Pollution, war, and greed threaten your survival. We will intervene, not to harm, but to guide. Resistance is futile." Resistance. The word sent shivers down Elena's spine. How could anyone resist beings capable of crossing galaxies? Still, doubt gnawed at her. If the Valeth truly wanted to help, why did their tone sound so final? Back in her lab, Elena pulled up old research files. Years ago, she'd stumbled upon legends about celestial visitors who came to purge civilizations deemed unworthy. Could these stories be connected to the Valeth? And if so, what did it mean for humanity? As night fell, the ships remained stationary, casting eerie glows across the horizon. Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was coming, something the Valeth weren't telling them. Whatever it was, she knew one thing for certain: Earth would never be the same again. The next morning, the world woke to an unsettling silence. The golden ships still loomed overhead, their presence both mesmerizing and oppressive. Streets that were usually bustling with life felt eerily empty as people stayed indoors, glued to their screens or peeking cautiously out of windows. News anchors repeated the same questions everyone was asking. Who are the Valeth? What do they want? And why now? Dr. Elena Caldera barely slept. Her mind raced with theories, fears, and fragments of ancient texts she'd studied years ago. She couldn't shake the feeling that the Valeth's arrival wasn't random, that there was a deeper connection between them and Earth's history. Determined to find answers, she returned to her lab early, poring over data and cross-referencing old myths about celestial beings who judged civilizations. Her thoughts were interrupted by a live broadcast on TV. A towering figure stepped out of one of the ships in Central Park. It was Commander Kelvor, leader of the Valeth. His crystalline armor shimmered like liquid gold, pulsating faintly with an inner light. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, his elongated limbs and angular face making him look more statue than man. Yet it was his eyes, deep, glowing pools of blue, that held everyone's attention. They seemed to pierce through the screen, seeing into the very soul of humanity. Calvor spoke again, this time using a translator device attached to his chest. "We are not your enemies," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Your species teeters on the edge of collapse. We offer guidance, technology, and salvation, but only if you cooperate." His words sparked immediate debate. Some saw hope in his promise of help, others saw manipulation. Governments around the world scrambled to respond, holding emergency meetings while protests erupted outside. In New York, a group of activists gathered near the park, holding signs that read, "No to alien rule and Earth belongs to humans." Among them was Marcus Kane, a former soldier turned rebel leader. With fiery determination, he shouted at anyone who would listen. "They're invaders," Marcus yelled, his voice cutting through the crowd. "They don't care about us. They just want control." But not everyone shared his anger. Nearby, a young mother named Sarah whispered prayers under her breath, clutching her child tightly. To her, the Valith represented a chance, a miracle, for a better future. Others simply watched in stunned silence, unsure what to believe. Elena decided to see Calvor for herself. Pushing through the throng of reporters and curious onlookers, she made her way closer to the ship. As she approached, she noticed subtle details she hadn't seen on TV. The intricate patterns etched into his armor, the faint hum of energy surrounding him. When their eyes met briefly, she felt a strange mix of awe and unease. Later that evening, Elena received an unexpected message on her computer. It was encrypted, sent anonymously from someone claiming to be a dissident within the Valith ranks. Attached was a file containing star maps and coordinates unfamiliar to any human database. At the bottom of the document, a single sentence stood out: "They're running from something worse." Elena stared at the screen, her heart pounding. If the Valith weren't here to conquer, then what or who? Were they fleeing? Whatever the truth was, it left her with more questions than answers. One thing was certain: humanity's fate was no longer in its own hands. By the third day of the Valith's arrival, their intentions began to reveal cracks. The golden ships that once seemed majestic now cast long, ominous shadows over Earth's cities. In Central Park, where Commander Calvor had made his speech, teams of Valith drones worked tirelessly, reshaping patches of land with strange glowing tools. Trees disappeared overnight, replaced by shimmering metallic structures that hummed softly. Officially, the Valith claimed these were healing stations designed to repair Earth's damaged ecosystems. But whispers of dissent spread like wildfire. Marcus Kane stood on a rooftop overlooking Manhattan, binoculars pressed to his eyes. Below, he watched as a group of humans, scientists, engineers, and even politicians, walked obediently into one of the glowing structures. None came back out. His jaw tightened. Something wasn't right. For days, he'd been gathering intel from underground networks, piecing together fragments of information about the Valith's true motives. What he found chilled him to the bone. "They're not here to help us," Marcus muttered to himself, lowering the binoculars. "They're testing us." Meanwhile, Dr. Elena Caldera wrestled with her own doubts. After decoding the anonymous message she'd received, she discovered something unsettling. The coordinates in the file matched locations across Earth where mysterious phenomena had occurred: mass animal migrations, sudden climate shifts, and unexplained disappearances. It was as if the Valith had been monitoring these sites for years, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Elena decided to confront Calvor directly. Armed with her research and questions burning in her mind, she approached the perimeter of the Valith encampment in Central Park. Two towering Valith guards blocked her path, their armor gleaming ominously. Before she could speak, Calvor emerged from the ship, his presence commanding silence. "Dr. Caldera," he said, his voice resonating deeply, "you seek answers." "I do," Elena replied, trying to steady her voice. "Why are you really here? And what are those structures you're building?" Calvor hesitated, his glowing blue eyes studying her intently. Then, with a sigh that sounded almost human, he gestured for her to follow him inside the ship. The interior was unlike anything Elena had ever seen. Walls of shifting light, holographic displays floating in midair, and corridors that seemed to stretch endlessly despite the ship's visible size. "We are refugees," Calvor admitted finally, stopping in a chamber filled with swirling star maps. "For centuries, we have fled an entity known only as the Voidborn. It consumes everything it touches: planets, stars, entire galaxies. We chose Earth because its unique energy signature may shield us, temporarily." Elena's breath caught. "And what happens when this Voidborn finds you?" Calvor's expression hardened. "We will fight. But humanity must adapt quickly. Your species is fragile. If you wish to survive, you must trust us." Back in the city, Marcus gathered his rebel allies in a dimly lit basement. Projected onto a cracked screen was footage of the Violet experiments. Humans hooked up to machines, their bodies twitching unnaturally. One video showed a man screaming before collapsing into dust. "They're turning us into lab rats," Marcus growled, slamming his fist on the table. "And no one's doing a damn thing about it." As tensions escalated, Elena realized the truth. The Violet weren't just running. They were preparing Earth for war. But at what cost? And could humanity really trust them? The pieces were falling into place, but the picture they formed was darker than anyone imagined. The days that followed were a blur of tension and discovery for Dr. Elena Caldera. After her conversation with Commander Calvor, she couldn't shake the weight of his words, or the haunted look in his glowing blue eyes. The Violet weren't conquerors or saviors. They were survivors, just like humanity. But their survival came at a cost, one that might now fall on Earth's shoulders. Every time Elena closed her eyes, visions of the Voidborn filled her mind. A swirling abyss of nothingness consuming everything it touched. Her resolve hardened. If the Violet were hiding secrets, then someone needed to uncover them. Someone had to ensure humanity wasn't sacrificed for their survival. That's when fate intervened. It happened during a sabotage attempt by Marcus Kane's rebel group. A small team infiltrated one of the Violet healing stations, planting explosives to destroy what they believed were weapons of control. As alarms blared and drones swarmed the area, chaos erupted. Elena, who had been nearby conducting research, found herself caught in the crossfire. She ducked behind a metallic structure as energy blasts lit up the night sky. That's when she saw him. Calvor himself, leading a contingent of Violet soldiers to contain the situation. His armor glowed brighter than ever, pulsing with urgency. But something went wrong. One of the rebels fired a makeshift EMP device, causing a surge of energy that sent Calvor stumbling. Without thinking, Elena ran toward him, shielding him from further attacks. "Stop," she shouted, raising her hands to both sides. "If you kill him, you'll never get answers." Marcus hesitated, his weapon aimed squarely at Calvor's chest. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then, reluctantly, he lowered the gun. "Fine," he growled. "But this isn't over." Back aboard the Violet flagship, Calvor recovered under the watchful care of his medics. When he finally spoke to Elena, his tone carried an unfamiliar softness. "You risk your life for me," he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. "Why?" "Because I need answers," Elena replied firmly. "And because I believe we can work together, if you're honest with us." Their uneasy alliance began there. Over the next few days, Calvor allowed Elena unprecedented access to the Violet archives. Through holographic projections, she learned about their homeworld, a planet of crystalline forests and endless skies, now reduced to ash by the Voidborn. She saw battles fought across galaxies, entire fleets obliterated in seconds. And she heard stories of sacrifices made by the Violet to protect others, even at great personal cost. Yet, amidst the grandeur of their history, cracks began to show. Elena noticed moments of hesitation in Calvor's demeanor, flashes of guilt when discussing certain decisions. Once, while reviewing records of abandoned colonies, she asked why the Vailith hadn't stayed to help those worlds fight the Voidborn. His response was quiet but telling. Sometimes survival means leaving others behind. As trust grew between them, so did Elena's understanding of the Vailith's plight. Still, doubts lingered. Why had they chosen Earth? Was it truly because of its unique energy signature, or was there another reason? Meanwhile, Marcus struggled with his own feelings. Though he despised the Vailith, he couldn't deny Elena's courage, or the possibility that she might be right. Late one night, as he pored over stolen data, he stumbled upon something shocking. Plans for a massive terraforming project set to begin within weeks. If activated, it would alter Earth's atmosphere permanently, rendering large portions uninhabitable for humans. "This changes everything," Marcus whispered, his fists clenched. Whether humanity liked it or not, the Vailith weren't just preparing Earth, they were remaking it, and unless someone stopped them, billions would suffer. For Elena, the question remained, could two species, so different yet equally desperate, find common ground before it was too late? The revelation hit Elena like a punch to the gut. As she sifted through more of the Vailith archives, guided reluctantly by Calvor, she uncovered a horrifying truth. The Voidborn wasn't just an abstract threat, it was already influencing Earth. The strange gravitational anomalies she detected weeks earlier weren't random. They were echoes of its approach. Subtle distortions in space-time, faint whispers of antimatter, and inexplicable energy surges, all signs pointed to one conclusion. The Voidborn was closer than anyone realized. Elena confronted Calvor in the dimly lit chamber where they'd spent hours reviewing data. Her voice trembled with urgency. "You knew this was coming, didn't you? That's why you chose Earth. Not because it could shield you, but because it's already marked." Calvor's glowing eyes flickered, betraying a rare moment of vulnerability. He nodded slowly. "Yes," he admitted. "We detected traces of the Voidborn's influence near your planet's edge, a black hole teetering on collapse. It is a gateway for them. Once open, nothing will stop its advance." Elena felt her stomach churn. "And you thought you could use Earth as bait? Sacrifice us while you prepare your defenses?" "No," Calvor snapped, his voice sharp but tinged with desperation. "We came here to save both our species. Your planet has unique properties, energy signatures that may hold the key to resisting the Voidborn. But time runs short. If we do not act now, neither of us will survive." Despite his words, doubt gnawed at Elena. She couldn't ignore the growing evidence that the Vailith's methods came at a steep price. Their terraforming projects weren't just about healing Earth. They were reshaping it to suit their needs, regardless of the human cost. Entire cities had been evacuated under the guise of safety, only to be razed and rebuilt with alien technology. Refugees crowded makeshift camps, angry and afraid. Meanwhile, Marcus Kane pieced together fragments of intercepted communications between Vailith ships. What he found confirmed his worst fears. The terraforming process would destabilize Earth's crust, triggering catastrophic earthquakes and tsunamis. Billions would die if the plan went ahead. Worse still, the Vailith seemed willing to accept those losses as collateral damage. "This isn't survival, it's genocide," Marcus muttered, pacing the dimly lit basement where his rebel group gathered. On the wall behind him, maps outlined areas targeted for transformation. Each red circle represented millions of lives. "They're not here to protect us. They're here to save themselves, even if it means wiping us out." But Elena saw another side to the story. While exploring the Vailith flagship, she stumbled upon something extraordinary. A prototype weapon hidden deep within the ship's core. It pulsed with an eerie blue light, surrounded by glyphs that seemed to shift and writhe when stared at too long. According to the accompanying logs, the device was designed to seal off entire star systems from the Voidborn, trapping the entity in a dimensional prison. However, activating it required immense energy, more than any single Vailith ship could generate. The implications were clear. The Vailith intended to harness Earth's natural resources to power the weapon, but doing so would devastate the planet, leaving it barren and lifeless. Alina wrestled with the moral dilemma. Could humanity trust the Vailith to use the weapon wisely, or would they sacrifice Earth entirely, abandoning it once their purpose was served? As tensions escalated, strange phenomena began manifesting worldwide. Shadows moved without light. Whispers echoed in empty rooms. Even the skies seemed darker, heavier, as though the weight of impending doom pressed down on everyone. People reported seeing figures made of pure darkness lurking at the edges of their vision. Panic spread faster than ever. Calvor called Alina to the bridge of the flagship, his expression grim. "Time is running out," he said. "We must decide soon, or risk losing everything." For Alina, the choice was agonizing. Trust the Vailith and hope for the best, or fight back and gamble on humanity's ingenuity. Either way, the stakes were unimaginably high. And somewhere out there, the Voidborn grew closer with each passing moment. The tension aboard the Vailith flagship was palpable, a charged silence hanging in the air like an approaching storm. Dr. Alina Caldera stood beside Commander Calvor on the bridge, staring at holographic projections of Earth's surface overlaid with red zones, areas marked for terraforming. Each zone represented lives upended, homes destroyed, and ecosystems erased. The weapon hidden in the ship's core offered salvation from the Voidborn, but its activation would come at a devastating cost to humanity. Alina turned to Calvor, her voice firm despite the unease twisting her stomach. "You can't do this without telling people the truth. They deserve to know what's at stake." Calvor's glowing eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening. And what would they do with that knowledge? Panic. Rebel further. "We cannot afford delay, Doctor. Every moment brings the Voidborn closer." Before Alina could respond, the doors hissed open and a figure stepped inside. Lieutenant Cyrillin, one of Calvor's most trusted officers. Her crystalline armor gleamed faintly, but her posture was rigid, betraying inner conflict. She approached cautiously, glancing between Alina and Calvor before speaking. "Commander," she began, her voice low but steady, "I have seen enough. Your plan will destroy billions of humans unnecessarily. There must be another way." Calvor stiffened, his tone icy. "This is not your decision to question, Lieutenant. Our survival depends on this course of action." Cyrillin hesitated, then straightened, her resolve hardening. "Survival should never come at the expense of morality. I cannot stand by while we repeat the mistakes of our past." With that, she removed a small device from her belt, a data crystal containing classified information, and handed it to Alina. "Take this. It contains schematics for the weapon and alternate plans we've been developing in secret. Perhaps together, you and my people can find a better solution." Calvor's expression darkened, anger simmering beneath his controlled exterior. "You betray me, Cyrillin." "I betray no one," she replied firmly. "I serve life, not destruction." As guards moved to detain her, Cyrillin raised a hand, signaling surrender. But her gaze remained unwavering, locked onto Calvor. "If you proceed as planned, you will lose more than Earth. You will lose whatever remains of our honor." With that, she allowed herself to be led away, leaving Alina holding the data crystal. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders. Here was proof that not all Vailith supported Calvor's drastic measures. Some, like Cyrillin, believed there was still hope for cooperation. Back on Earth, Marcus Kane received encrypted files sent anonymously by Alina. The contents shocked him, detailed plans for the weapon, along with evidence of dissent within the Vailith ranks. For the first time, he saw a glimmer of possibility, that humanity might yet turn the tide against their so-called saviors. "This changes everything," Marcus muttered, showing the files to his rebel allies gathered in their underground hideout. "If even some of the Vailith are questioning their leader, maybe we can exploit that divide." But exploiting divisions wouldn't be easy. As days passed, strange occurrences intensified across the globe. Shadows moved independently of light sources, whispers echoed through empty streets, and blackened patches appeared in the sky, swallowing stars whole. People reported sightings of amorphous shapes drifting near Violet installations, manifestations of the void-born testing boundaries, probing weaknesses. Elena worked tirelessly with Suralin, who had gone into hiding after her defection, to refine the alternate plans. Together, they theorized that Earth's unique energy signature could amplify the weapon's power without fully destabilizing the planet. However, implementing the new strategy required access to the flagship's core, a task nearly impossible given Calvor's heightened security protocols. "We need someone on the inside," Elena said during one of their covert meetings. "Someone who can disable the safeguards long enough for us to activate the weapon safely." Marcus volunteered immediately, though Elena protested. "It's too dangerous," she argued. "You don't understand what you're walking into." Marcus met her gaze, determination burning in his eyes. "I understand plenty. You think I haven't lost enough already. If this works, it'll save billions, including those who matter most to me. I'm not backing down." Reluctantly, Elena agreed. With Suralin providing intel and Marcus leading the infiltration team, they prepared for their most daring mission yet. Time was running out. The Voidborn loomed ever closer, its presence growing stronger with each passing hour. As the final pieces fell into place, Elena couldn't help but wonder, would their fragile alliance hold long enough to make a difference? The plan was risky, but it was the only hope they had. Dr. Elena Caldera stood in a dimly lit warehouse on the outskirts of New York City, surrounded by Marcus Kane's rebel group and a small faction of defected Violet soldiers, led by Lieutenant Suralin. The air buzzed with tension as everyone prepared for the mission ahead. Trust between humans and aliens hung by a thread, fragile and uncertain, but necessity forced them to work together. Elena held up a holographic projection of the Violet flagship, its intricate layout glowing faintly in the darkness. "This is our target," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of what they were about to attempt. "We need to reach the core and modify the weapon's activation sequence before Calvor uses it. If we succeed, we might save Earth without destroying it." Marcus stepped forward, his expression grim. "And if we fail?" "Then the Voidborn consumes everything," Suralin interjected, her crystalline armor shimmering faintly in the low light. "There is no room for failure." Their strategy relied heavily on timing and precision. Suralin's knowledge of the flagship would guide them through its labyrinthine corridors, while Marcus and his team provided ground support, disabling security systems and creating diversions. Elena's role was critical. She carried the modified schematics that would alter the weapon's energy consumption, ensuring it wouldn't destabilize Earth's crust. As they finalized their preparations, strange phenomena intensified outside. Shadows moved unnaturally, twisting into shapes that seemed almost alive. Whispers filled the air, growing louder with each passing moment. It was as if the Voidborn sensed their defiance, probing for weaknesses in their resolve. People across the globe reported sightings of dark tendrils snaking through the skies, reaching toward the golden ships like grasping hands. "We're running out of time," Marcus muttered, gripping his weapon tightly. "Whatever that thing is, it's getting stronger." Elena nodded, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that every second counted, that the Voidborn wasn't just approaching. It was already here, testing their defenses, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. But there was no turning back now. They had one chance to get this right. Under the cover of night, the team made their way to the edge of Central Park, where the flagship loomed like a golden monolith against the darkened sky. Suralin led them to a hidden access point, a maintenance hatch barely visible beneath layers of alien camouflage. With precise movements, she disabled the lock, granting them entry. Inside, the ship felt alive, walls pulsating with soft light, corridors humming with energy. Every step echoed ominously, heightening the sense of danger. At every turn, They encountered Valith patrols, forcing Marcus and his rebels to engage in quick skirmishes, while Sira Lin guided Alina deeper into the ship. Finally, they reached the core chamber. The weapon sat at the center, its eerie blue glow casting shifting patterns across the walls. Alina approached it cautiously, connecting her device to the control panel. Her fingers flew over the interface as she uploaded the new schematics, sweat trickling down her brow. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed, bathing the chamber in an ominous glow. Calvor's voice boomed over the intercom, cold and commanding. "You have betrayed us all." Guards flooded the corridor outside, cutting off their escape route. Marcus turned to Alina, his eyes blazing with determination. "Keep going. We'll hold them off." Sira Lin placed a hand on Alina's shoulder, her voice firm. "Do not stop. No matter what happens, finish this." Alina nodded, focusing on the task at hand. As shouts and blasts echoed behind her, she worked furiously, knowing their lives, and the fate of 2 species, depended on her success. Outside, the shadows grew darker, closing in. The Voidborn was watching, waiting, and somewhere deep within the ship, Calvor prepared to make his final stand. The core chamber erupted into chaos as Valith guards stormed in, their weapons crackling with energy. Marcus and his rebels formed a defensive line at the entrance, firing back with makeshift plasma rifles scavenged from earlier raids. The air sizzled with bursts of light, echoing metallic clangs reverberating through the ship. Every shot fired felt like a heartbeat, urgent, desperate, fleeting. Alina barely noticed the battle raging behind her. Her focus was locked on the weapon's control panel, her fingers flying over the interface as she adjusted its parameters. The blue glow intensified, pulsing erratically as if resisting the changes. Sweat dripped down her face, but she didn't stop. "Almost there," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. Sira Lin stood beside her, shielding her from stray blasts, while keeping an eye on the advancing Valith forces. "Hurry, Doctor," she urged, her voice tight with strain. "Calvor will not wait much longer." Outside the chamber, Calvor strode toward them, his armor gleaming ominously under the red emergency lights. His presence radiated authority and fury. Behind him, reinforcements poured in, pinning Marcus's group against the walls. Despite being outnumbered, Marcus fought fiercely, refusing to yield even when his weapon overheated and sparked in his hands. "You think you can defy me?" Calvor bellowed, his voice resonating like thunder. "This is our only chance for survival. Do you truly believe your feeble species knows better?" Marcus spat blood from a cut on his lip, glaring defiantly. "Maybe we don't know everything, but at least we're trying to save lives instead of sacrificing them." Calvor hesitated for a split second, pain flickering across his glowing eyes. Then he raised his hand, signaling his soldiers to advance. "Enough talk. End this." As the skirmish intensified, Alina finally completed the modifications. A triumphant beep signaled success, but relief was short-lived. The weapon began vibrating violently, its energy surging beyond safe levels. Alarms screamed louder, warning of imminent overload. "It's too unstable," Sira Lin shouted, grabbing Alina's arm. "We need to evacuate now." "No." Alina shook her head, panic rising in her chest. "If we leave, it'll detonate prematurely. It'll tear apart half the planet." Before either could react, Calvor entered the chamber, his massive frame blocking the doorway. He looked at Alina, then at the weapon, realization dawning in his eyes. "What have you done?" "I've given us a fighting chance," Alina replied, her voice trembling but resolute. "But someone has to stay and stabilize it long enough to activate properly. Otherwise, all of this is for nothing." For a moment, silence fell over the room. Even the sounds of battle outside seemed to fade. Calvor stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then, without a word, he stepped forward, brushing past Sira Lin and Alina. "This is my burden to bear," he said quietly. I led my people here. I made the choices that brought us to this point. Let me finish what I started." "Commander, no," Siralin protested, reaching out to stop him. But Kelvor placed a firm hand on her shoulder, silencing her. "Go," he ordered, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Protect them. Ensure they survive." Tears welled up in Siralin's eyes, but she nodded reluctantly. Turning to Elena, she grabbed her arm. "We must go. Now." Reluctantly, Elena followed Siralin out of the chamber, casting one last glance at Kelvor as the doors sealed shut behind them. Outside, Marcus and the remaining rebels regrouped, battered but alive. Together, they fled through the twisting corridors, pursued by shadowy tendrils that seeped through the walls. Manifestations of the Voidborn, drawn to the weapon's power. Behind them, the flagship shuddered violently as the weapon activated. A blinding flash of light engulfed the ship, followed by an explosion that rippled outward, distorting reality itself. For a brief moment, the world held its breath. When the dust settled, Earth remained intact, but the cost weighed heavily on everyone. Kelvor's sacrifice had bought them time, sealing off the Voidborn temporarily. Yet the shadows still lingered, a reminder that the fight was far from over. The ground trembled beneath their feet as Elena, Marcus, Siralin, and the surviving rebels emerged from the Valeth flagship. The once golden vessel now lay in ruins, its surface cracked and darkened by the explosion that had sealed the Voidborn away. Smoke billowed into the sky, mingling with the eerie black tendrils that still writhed faintly before dissipating. It was over, for now, but the victory felt hollow. Kelvor's final act of sacrifice weighed heavily on everyone, especially Siralin. She stood motionless, staring at the wreckage, her crystalline armor dulled by ash and soot. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. "He gave everything, for both our peoples." Elena placed a hand on her shoulder, unsure what to say. Words seemed inadequate in the face of such loss. Yet, even amidst the grief, there was a flicker of hope. Kelvor's decision hadn't just saved Earth. It had proven that cooperation between humans and Valeth was possible, even in the direst moments. Marcus clenched his fists, guilt gnawing at him. For weeks, he'd fought against the Valeth, labeling them invaders and enemies. Now he couldn't deny the bravery of their fallen commander, or the fact that they shared a common enemy. "We can't let his sacrifice be wasted," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "If we're going to survive this, we need to work together, not just for today, but for tomorrow." As dawn broke over New York City, the survivors gathered in Central Park, where the first Valeth ship had landed days earlier. What remained of the alien structures, once symbols of oppression, now stood as reminders of resilience and unity. People began to trickle out of hiding, cautiously returning to the streets. Some cheered, others cried, and many simply stared in stunned silence at the wreckage overhead. Humanity had faced annihilation, and somehow endured. Elena addressed a makeshift crowd of scientists, soldiers, and civilians, her voice steadied despite her exhaustion. "This isn't the end," she said firmly. "Kelvor bought us time, but the Voidborn isn't gone. We have to prepare for its return, and next time, we'll be ready." Her words resonated deeply, igniting a spark of determination among those listening. Survivors banded together, pooling resources and knowledge to rebuild. The Valeth who remained, those loyal to Siralin, offered their technology and expertise, forging an uneasy but necessary alliance. Workshops sprang up across the city, repurposing salvaged materials from the ships to create new tools, shelters, and defenses. In private, Elena struggled with survivor's guilt. She replayed Kelvor's final moments over and over in her mind, wondering if there had been another way. One night, unable to sleep, she found herself staring at the stars through a telescope in her lab. To her surprise, Siralin joined her, standing silently beside her for several minutes before speaking. "He believed in you," Siralin said softly. "Even when I doubted your species, he saw potential. He knew you could change things, Not just for yourselves, but for all life. Elena nodded, tears welling in her eyes. I wish it hadn't cost him so much. Cyrillin placed a hand on her arm, her touch surprisingly gentle. Sacrifice is never easy, but neither is redemption. That is our task now, to honor his choice by building something better. Meanwhile, Marcus took charge of organizing global resistance efforts. Using data recovered from the flagship, he identified weak points in Earth's defenses and coordinated efforts to strengthen them. Underground networks expanded, connecting disparate groups into a unified force. For the first time in his life, Marcus felt a sense of purpose beyond anger or vengeance. But shadows lingered. Strange phenomena continued to occur. Distorted gravity fields, whispers in empty spaces, and fleeting glimpses of darkness moving where no light existed. The Voidborn wasn't done with them yet, and deep down, everyone knew the battle ahead would make Calvor's sacrifice seem small in comparison. Still, as humanity and the Vailith worked side by side, repairing what had been broken, one truth became clear. Survival depended not on power or weapons, but on trust, courage, and the unyielding will to fight for a brighter future. Months passed, and Earth began to heal. The scars left by the Vailith's arrival, and their subsequent battle with the Voidborn, were still visible, but they served as reminders of what humanity had endured. Cracks in the ground where energy surges had destabilized the crust were now filled with wildflowers, sprouting defiantly from ashes. Cities once abandoned or destroyed were slowly rebuilt, not just by humans, but through a newfound partnership with the remaining Vailith. Dr. Elena Caldera became a symbol of hope for both species. Her work bridged the gap between human ingenuity and Vailith technology, creating solutions that neither could have achieved alone. She spearheaded global initiatives to restore ecosystems devastated by years of neglect and terraforming experiments. Under her guidance, teams planted genetically modified trees capable of purifying polluted air and filtering toxins from water sources. Rivers ran clearer, skies grew bluer, and forests reclaimed land thought lost forever. Yet it wasn't just about rebuilding, it was about unity. In Central Park, where Calvor had first addressed humanity, a monument stood tall. Made of shimmering crystal salvaged from the wreckage of his ship, it bore an inscription in both English and Vailith glyphs. For those who gave everything so others might live. Visitors often left flowers at its base, paying tribute to the sacrifices made on both sides. Cyrillin played a vital role in fostering this fragile peace. As leader of the defected Vailith faction, she worked tirelessly to ensure her people integrated into human society without fear or resentment. Together with Elena, she established joint councils to oversee reconstruction efforts and prepare for the Voidborn's inevitable return. These councils weren't perfect. They argued, debated, and sometimes clashed, but they represented progress. For the first time, two vastly different species were learning to coexist. Marcus Kane found his place in this new world as well. Once driven by anger and distrust, he now led a coalition of rebels turned guardians, tasked with protecting Earth's borders. Using advanced Vailith sensors, they monitored anomalies in space, searching for any sign of the Voidborn. Though quieter than before, Marcus remained vigilant, knowing that complacency could doom them all. Yet even he couldn't deny the change within himself. He no longer saw the Vailith as invaders. Instead, he viewed them as allies, fallible, flawed, but determined to survive alongside humanity. One evening, Elena stood atop a hill overlooking New York City, watching as lights twinkled against the darkening sky. Beside her, Cyrillin joined silently, her armor glowing faintly under the moonlight. "Do you think we're ready?" Elena asked softly, breaking the silence. "No," Cyrillin admitted after a pause. "But readiness is not the measure of survival. It's resilience. And if there's one thing both our species share, it's the ability to rise after falling." Elena smiled faintly, turning her gaze upward. Stars glittered brightly, free of the shadows that had once loomed over them. Somewhere out there, The Voidborn waited, patient and relentless. But for now, Earth thrived, not because of conquest or domination, but because of cooperation and courage. As the wind carried whispers of distant galaxies, Alina felt a quiet confidence settle over her. Humanity wasn't alone anymore. Together, they had faced darkness and emerged stronger. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And perhaps that was enough.